They tell you to speak up, to be authentic, to express yourself. That silence is weakness, that withholding is dishonesty, that you owe the world your truth. But understand this, the man who speaks too much invites his own destruction. In every room, there is power in what is said, but far more power in what is not. The tongue is the traitor of the mind, and the man who cannot master his speech cannot master his fate. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote, "A prince should be slow to speak and quick to act, not because words are without value, but because their value is eroded the more they are spent. A coin dropped rarely has weight. A coin dropped constantly, noise." Now look around you. We live in a culture of noise. Everyone talks, everyone posts, everyone shares, overshares, narrates their every move, their every opinion, as if the world were waiting to hear them breathe. This is not connection. This is exposure, and exposure is weakness. The more they know of you, the easier you are to manipulate. The more you reveal, the easier you are to predict. The more you explain, the less mystique you command. Words, when uncontrolled, become chains, binding you to perceptions, reactions, obligations. You give people the very tools to attack you, so let's begin where it hurts. Why do people talk so much? Because silence is uncomfortable. Because in silence, they are left with their own thoughts. Because they mistake speech for confidence. But true confidence requires no explanation. A lion does not announce itself in the jungle. It simply moves, and everything else adapts. Think of your own life. Consider how often you've spoken out of impulse, out of nervousness, out of a desire to impress, and then regretted, said too much in a negotiation, revealed too much in a moment of trust, explained yourself when none had asked, confessed a plan too soon. Every word you say is a stone thrown into the river of perception, and not all ripples can be reversed. There is a difference between clarity and exposure. A wise man speaks when he must. A fool speaks because he can. Machiavelli knew this well. In the courts of Florence, silence was not emptiness, it was a shield. To remain unread was to remain powerful. You don't win the game by letting everyone see your cards. Repetition matters. So hear this again. The person who speaks too much is the easiest person to defeat. In a meeting, the one who listens gathers intelligence. In relationships, the one who remains calm and reserved holds the emotional upper hand. In war, the silent strategist always outmaneuvers the impulsive commander. And yet we are conditioned otherwise. From childhood we are told, use your words, speak your mind, don't hold back. But these are the teachings of those who benefit from your predictability. Society thrives on conformity, and conformity requires transparency. The more you express, the more you can be categorized, labeled, controlled, but if they cannot read you, they cannot rule you. This is the essence of Machiavellian strategy, to be deliberate with action and elusive in intention. Silence becomes your disguise, precision, your weapon. You do not react to every slight. You do not announce every plan. You do not parade your ambitions in the public square. You move in quiet. You let results speak in volumes your mouth never could. Now ask yourself, when was the last time silence made someone underestimate you? When was the last time your quiet unnerved a room? That is power. Talking is easy. Talking is cheap. Anyone can do it. But to restrain your tongue in a world addicted to noise, that is mastery. We live in an age where people feel entitled to your thoughts, where strangers ask for opinions, responses, validation, but you owe them nothing. Understand this, you are not obligated to fill silence with sound. You are not required to comment, to explain, to justify. Your silence is not a lack of thought, it is a surplus of control. Machiavelli would remind you, it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But fear is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet presence of a man who does not flinch, a man who does not overshare, a man whose silence speaks volumes. And here lies the trap. You will be tempted to explain yourself, to clarify your silence, to make others comfortable. Resist. Your job is not to make others comfortable, it is to make yourself powerful. And power requires restraint. Power requires discipline. Power requires the ability to sit in silence while others squirm in it. This is not just philosophy, this is strategy. In business, the one who speaks first often loses the deal. In conflict, the one who reveals his hand first often loses the battle. In love, the one who chases often loses the respect of the one pursued. Speaking too much is not just a social error, it is a tactical vulnerability. So what should you do? You must cultivate the art of holding back, say less than necessary. Let others fill the silence, let them reveal themselves, let them assume what they wish, Assumptions are often deadlier than facts. Be the man they cannot place. The man who listens more than he speaks. The man who watches while others react. And when you do speak, make every word deliberate. Let it land like a blade, not a breeze. Because in the end, it is not the loudest man in the room who commands it. It is the man whose silence makes others lean in. They will tell you that openness builds trust, that if you are transparent, if you speak freely, people will respect you. But Machiavelli would laugh, not with cruelty, with clarity, because he knew what most never learn. People do not trust the open book. They use it. Let us return to the court of power. Whether it is Florence, your office, your family, or your mind, in every arena where men compete, information is currency. And the man who gives away his currency for free is not generous, he is poor. Understand this truth. When you talk too much, you are not bonding, you are bleeding. You bleed your thoughts, you bleed your intentions, you bleed your leverage, one drop at a time, through jokes, confessions, small talk, nervous chatter, emotional blurts. And the people who smile as you speak, they are not always listening to understand. They are collecting, filing, strategizing, for the day your openness becomes their advantage. Machiavelli saw it in princes. You see it in friends, the ones who nod while you vent, only to repeat your words when it serves them. The co-workers who let you explain your side, only to twist it behind closed doors. The lover who demands full emotional disclosure, only to weaponize your wounds in the next argument. There is no moral purity in speech, there is only strategic consequence. So let us begin with this simple shift. Stop thinking of talking as honesty. Start seeing it as a move that must be calculated, positioned, timed. Just as a soldier does not swing wildly in battle, you do not speak wildly in life. Remember this, silence does not mean absence, it means presence without exposure. A lion that is still is not a lion that is weak, it is a lion that is watching. The man who talks too much becomes a mirror. He reflects everyone else's ideas, everyone else's opinions, until he has none of his own. Watch people at a dinner table. Watch how quickly the loudest man starts agreeing with whomever is dominant, not because he believes, but because he fears disconnection. He confuses conversation with belonging, but Machiavelli teaches us, true belonging is not given, it is commanded, through presence, not performance. So here is your next move, audit your speech. Notice how many times you speak to seek approval, how many times you offer commentary to avoid awkwardness, how many times you explain yourself to escape judgment. And then ask, what if you said nothing? The discomfort that follows is your training ground. Learn to endure it, because the man who cannot bear silence is a man who will always be controlled by others, by social cues, by fear, by the need to please. Now let us talk about unpredictability. A man who talks too much is easy to map. Like a highway on a clear day, his path is visible. You can see where he's going. You can plan for it, block it, intercept it. The moment he opens his mouth, he becomes known, and once known, he is owned. But a man who speaks rarely and with care becomes a maze. You do not know if he agrees or disagrees, if he is thinking or waiting, if he's planning to attack or simply observing. He becomes an edge you cannot touch, a mystery you cannot measure. In Machiavelli's discourses, he reminds us, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, which means what you appear to be is often more powerful than what you truly are. And how do you appear powerful? Not by shouting, but by controlling how much others see. Mystery is magnetic. It draws curiosity, speculation, and fear. Too much speech destroys mystery. It lays bare the mind, it removes the shadows, and shadows are where your power lies. Let us apply this to your ambitions. You have goals, plans, ideas that could shift the course of your life, but every time you speak them aloud, to people who neither earned your trust nor understand your vision, you chip away at the energy of those goals. You dilute them, you invite skepticism, you expose them to air, and sometimes they rot. Keep your plans close. Let your execution be the announcement. Say it again, talk less, do more, and when you do talk, make it mean something. Machiavelli favored decisive speech. Not rambling, not guessing, not pleasing. Speak as if every word costs you, because it does. In negotiations, the one who breaks the silence first is often the one who loses. In love, the one who declares feelings too quickly gives the other the upper hand. In conflict, the one who over-explains concedes ground. You must learn to sit in the silence after a question. Let the other party squirm. Let them speak more. Let them give you what you refuse to give away. There is power in stillness, power in pauses, Power in being the one who doesn't fill the space. But you must retrain yourself. You have been taught that silence is weakness, that if you do not speak, you are submissive, that if you do not answer, you are afraid. Reject this poison. Embrace the opposite. Silence is strength. Refusal to speak is not fear, it is control. There is a moment in every interaction where silence shifts the energy, where people begin to lean forward, where their minds fill the gap with assumptions. That is when you begin to dominate, not with sound, but with presence. And this, above all, is the Machiavellian truth. Words may persuade, but silence commands. There is a reason the kings of old had jesters, but never spoke like them. A man of power does not speak constantly. He speaks with consequence, with control, with weight, and in the moments when he says nothing, the room leans forward. This is not charisma, it is discipline. Machiavelli understood it, and now so must you. In the modern world where attention is currency, the temptation is endless. Explain, respond, react. Everyone wants your take, but every time you give it, you shrink, not in volume, but in value. Because men of influence are not defined by how much they say, they are defined by how little they need to. Ask yourself this: why do you feel the urge to respond to everything? Someone disrespects you, you feel the need to clarify. Someone misunderstands you, you feel the need to correct. Someone gossips, you feel the need to defend. But Machiavelli teaches, the more you explain, the more you concede. Not just power, dignity, frame. Silence, on the other hand, says everything that must be said without offering a single word. Let's talk strategy. In every conversation, there are two tracks, the words being spoken and the power behind them. Most people live only on the surface track. They listen to words, they respond to tone, they react to emotion, but the strategist lives beneath. He watches what's left unsaid. He pays attention to who is trying to prove something. He speaks only when it tilts the balance. This is where you must train your mind to watch what others miss, and more importantly, to restrain your own need to be heard. Because those who cannot control their voice will never control their world. You see it everywhere. In politics, the one who over-explains looks guilty. The one who denies too loudly loses credibility. The one who remains calm, unmoved, unfazed, unrushed, he gains control of the room. In relationships, the partner who always needs to explain themselves, justify every move, fill every silence, eventually loses respect. But the one who listens more than they speak, who chooses their words, who pauses before reacting, they become the center of gravity. In business, the employee who always talks to be seen becomes forgettable. But the one who delivers in silence, who speaks only when value demands it, rises quietly, and then all at once. You must understand that in any power dynamic, the burden of explanation belongs to the weaker party. The moment you feel the urge to explain, to justify, to overspeak, you must pause and ask, what am I really trying to prove? Often it is not strength, it is insecurity. Machiavelli wrote, it is much safer to be feared than loved when one of the two must be lacking. But fear, as he meant it, is not cruelty, it is command, it is presence, and presence begins with restraint. The silent man does not need your approval. He does not fear your misunderstanding. He lets people form their opinions and then defeats them with action. He does not reveal the full shape of his ambition. He lets people underestimate him, dismiss him, even laugh at him, and then he moves, surgically with precision. He is the shadow in the room, not because he hides, but because he waits. There is a myth in modern society that silence equals passivity, that the man who doesn't talk must not have anything to say. But look deeper. The most powerful predators are the ones that do not roar before they strike. Machiavelli used the image of the lion and the fox, the lion for power, the fox for cunning. But what ties them together is not how loud they are, it's how precise, how deliberate. You must become the same. In your daily life, practice the pause. When someone provokes you, pause. When someone flatters you, pause. When you feel the urge to vent, to rant, to confess, pause. In that pause you reclaim yourself, and when you do speak, speak with the energy of someone who could have said 1,000 things but chose one. This is power. Let others exhaust themselves, trying to be understood. Let them pour out their feelings to earn affection. Let them speak endlessly, just to fill the void. You, however, you must be different. Be the man who does not need to be decoded. Be the man who cannot be anticipated. Be the man whose silence makes others nervous. That is the man who wins, because in a world that overvalues words, silence becomes gold. Now reflect on this. How many people in your life do you remember, not because they spoke the most, but because when they did, it mattered? That is who you must become. A king does not shout to be obeyed. His authority is in the quiet expectation. The room adjusts to his presence. not because he forces it, but because he never lowers himself to seek permission. You do not need to chase validation. You do not need to narrate your journey. You do not need to respond to every comment, question, or challenge. What you need is this: to become so complete in silence that when you finally speak, the world pauses to listen. And that is the path Machiavelli laid bare, not to speak more, but to speak with purpose. Not to be known, but to be remembered. Not to perform, but to prevail. The world is full of noise. Be the echo of consequence. The most dangerous man in any room is not the one who boasts, not the one who brags, not the one who raises his voice to command attention. It is the one who watches, listens, and says little. Because silence is not absence, it is presence refined. Machiavelli understood this better than most. In courts where betrayal was currency and perception was everything, the man who spoke little left nothing to be used against him. His silence was not hesitation, it was a weapon. Understand this clearly. Words are liabilities. Every sentence you speak can be held, twisted, quoted, and turned against you. But silence holds no fingerprints. It leaves no trace. It cannot be dissected, manipulated, or repurposed. It simply is. And when you learn to master silence, not as an escape, but as a stance, you begin to see just how clumsy the world is with its tongue. Most people talk to relieve pressure. You will talk to increase it. Most people speak to be understood. You will speak to be misunderstood if it suits you. Most people share their plans for applause. You will share nothing and let the result announce itself in silence. Let's take this further. Imagine a negotiation, a meeting, a conflict. The average man fills the silence with self-defense, nervous chuckles, rushed explanations. But you lean back, you let silence stretch. You watch how the others squirm, fill the void, expose their insecurities, their priorities, their emotions. They will try to fill the vacuum you created, and in doing so, they show their hand. This is where your dominance begins. Because the man who controls the rhythm of a conversation controls its outcome, and rhythm is born in silence. Most people are addicted to filling space, but a strategist, he makes space feel heavy, unbearable, pregnant with consequence. In this way, you weaponize silence. You learn to delay your response, to pause longer than necessary, to stare without explanation, to let your presence fill what your words never will. It is here, in the stillness, that your opponent begins to doubt himself. He questions whether you agree or oppose, whether you are offended or unaffected, whether you are planning something or nothing at all. His imagination does your work for you, and in strategy, that is gold. Remember, the strongest plays are often made without a single move. So too must you learn to speak by not speaking, to control by not reacting, to command without announcing. Let's turn to Machiavelli again. He wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. But what if the ruler never reveals what he thinks of those men? What if he lets them reveal themselves? This is your advantage. The less you say, the more others reveal. The less you express, the more others project. The less you explain, the more others guess, and often they guess wrong. You must become unreadable, not in a way that is distant or cold, but in a way that is composed, still impenetrable. A man whose emotions are not public property. A man whose thoughts are not offered freely. A man whose intentions are hidden beneath a calm surface. Why? Because the moment they can read you, they can reach you. And the moment they can reach you, they can move you. But if they cannot tell what you're thinking, if they cannot tell what you feel, if they cannot predict what you'll do, you become impossible to manipulate. Let's bring this into the real world. In your personal life, there will be people who provoke you just to see your reaction. Do not give it. Do not explain. Do not play the part they've scripted for you. Let them wrestle with the silence. In your business life, there will be moments where you are asked to reveal too much about your plans, your prices, your position. Don't say less. Let others speak more. Watch what they give away. In your romantic life, you will be tempted to explain your worth, to convince, to argue for your place. Stop. Your presence, your silence, your standards, they must speak louder than your mouth ever could. You are not in the business of noise, you are in the business of control. And control requires you to be the question, not the answer. When they ask, "What are you thinking?" Smile. When they demand, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Wait. When they accuse you of being distant, unreachable, unreadable, nod. Let them wonder, let them guess, let them talk themselves into circles. That is your leverage. A strategist never reveals his next move, not out of fear, but out of understanding that the unknown is more powerful than the known. That anticipation is more paralyzing than action, and this is the final piece of part 4. Don't fear being misunderstood. Fear being predictable, because the predictable man is the controllable man, and the controllable man is not a threat, he is not respected, he is not remembered, but the one who moves in silence, who listens more than he speaks, who keeps his cards hidden, his reactions measured, his presence deliberate, he becomes unforgettable. And in the world of power, the unforgettable man wins. The world fears what it cannot explain. That is why silence unnerves people more than anger. Why a calm stare carries more weight than 1,000 words. Because when a man refuses to reveal himself, when he withholds his inner world, the people around him are forced to confront their own. Machiavelli understood this well. He did not speak of silence as passivity. He spoke of it as calculation, as a tactic, as a mirror. Because in silence, you force others to reflect, to reveal, to act first, and the one who acts first is often the one who loses. Let's speak plainly now. There is a reason why the most influential men in history have always spoken sparingly. They are remembered not for flooding the world with their voice, but for the weight their silence carried. Their restraint created anticipation, their scarcity created value, their mystery created myth. You must become the same, because every word you give away for free is a piece of your power diluted. And every silence you maintain, when others expect noise, is a signal, one that says, I do not need to explain, I do not seek validation, I do not move on your terms. And that is terrifying to most people. Look around. In every interaction, people want reassurance. They want to know where they stand. They want you to confirm, to deny, to react, to confess, to validate. But when you don't, they spiral, they second guess, they fill the blanks. And that blank space, your silence, is the battlefield where you win without lifting a finger. Machiavelli wrote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. And the first command is not of others, but of yourself. Command your impulses, your need to defend yourself, your desire to speak your mind, your craving to be seen, understood, appreciated." Silence teaches you to master those urges, because the man who cannot hold his tongue cannot hold his throne. There's a pattern in the fall of men. Listen to interviews of powerful men after their downfall. What do they say? I said too much. I trusted the wrong person. I revealed my plans too early. Always, the crime begins with conversation. So ask yourself, what are you giving away? Every time you speak freely, emotionally, impulsively, you leak leverage, you betray your hand, you lose positioning. Your thoughts, no longer yours. Your pain, open for judgment. Your intentions, exposed. This is not about paranoia. This is about precision. A tactician does not hide everything. He reveals what he chooses, when it serves him. Controlled speech, like a scalpel, like a blade. Now let us pivot to the battlefield of perception. The man who speaks too much is easy to categorize. He becomes familiar, digestible, boxed. But the man who doesn't, he becomes many things. To some wise, to others dangerous, to others still a mystery worth chasing. Let them project. Let them write their own stories about you. Let them wonder. Your job is not to clarify their fiction. It is to remain unreadable enough that the myth becomes more powerful than the truth ever could. This is how legends are born, through deliberate opacity, through chosen silences, through mystery that bends perception. This is why Machiavelli favored secrecy, not because he feared others, but because he knew influence requires distance. The more familiar you become, the less formidable you appear. Power decays in overexposure. The more you are seen, the less you are respected. The more you speak, the less your words weigh. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone's silence made you overthink? When was the last time a lack of reaction got under your skin more than an insult? That's the weapon, that's the tactic, that's the game. To speak when silence would cost you more, that is wisdom. To speak when silence would amplify your presence, that is dominance. You must become addicted not to being heard, but to being felt. Let others compete for attention. You will command it. Let others fight to be liked. You will ensure you are respected. Let others cry to be understood. You will be misunderstood, but never ignored. There is nothing more powerful than a man whose silence makes others feel exposed, because that silence is not a void, it is a presence. Not absence, it is precision. And in that precision, in that discipline, in that refusal to waste breath for approval, you become something very few men ever become: untouchable. Machiavelli would have admired you, not for your words, but for your restraint, not for your charisma, but for your control, not for how loudly you moved, but for how powerfully you stood still. So the next time you're tempted to speak, ask, does this serve me or does this expose me? And if the answer is the latter, Do not speak. Let them wonder, let them wait, let them twist in the space between your gaze and your words, because in that space, you win. Now we arrive at the final lesson. If you've understood nothing else, remember this: speech is not harmless, it is not neutral, it is not free. Every word costs you, sometimes in credibility, sometimes in control, sometimes in consequences you never see coming until it's far too late. Machiavelli knew this, and so must you. In his world, men were not destroyed by swords alone. They were destroyed by whispers, by slips of the tongue, by the wrong words in the wrong ears. And though centuries have passed, nothing has changed. In fact, it has become worse. Today, the enemy does not need to torture your secrets out of you. You give them freely, on calls, on screens, in texts, in comments. You talk, you vent, you open up, and with every word you build a map of your fears, your patterns, your weaknesses. They don't need to guess what moves you. You've already told them. But now you are different. You understand the power of restraint. You understand that silence is not emptiness. It is potential. It is the pause before the strike. It is the stillness that draws attention, the absence that makes them reach. Because when you do not speak, they wonder. When you do not react, they panic. When you do not explain, they chase. This is psychological dominance, and it is built not by force but by discipline. Think of it this way: a man who speaks constantly is like a fire that burns fast and loud, but it dies quickly, predictable, exhausted. The man of silence, he is like stone, cold, unmoving, but permanent, enduring. And when he chooses to move, to speak, to act, it shakes the ground. That is who you must become. You've heard the lies. Speak your truth. Say what's on your mind. Let it all out. But the great men, the real ones, the ones who bend history, they do not operate like that. They do not leak thoughts like spilled wine. They guard their minds like fortresses. They understand what they do not say cannot be used. What they do not show cannot be judged. What they do not give cannot be taken. You want to lead? Speak less. You want to be desired? Speak less. You want to be respected, remembered, and impossible to manipulate? Speak less. And when you do speak, do it with the force of a man who could have said everything, but chose one sentence, one phrase, one blow. That is what makes people stop. Listen, remember, you don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to argue your value. You don't need to explain why you are the way you are. You need only to be silent long enough for the world to notice it misses your sound. That's when you've won. In the end, power is not about volume, it's about control. It's about emotional leverage. It's about staying unreadable in a world that insists you reveal everything. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." But what he left unsaid, what you must now see is this: the fox does not speak, he observes. The lion does not roar at everything, he chooses when to be heard. And you are both. You are the silence in the room that bends its energy. You are the calm that unsettles the arrogant. You are the restraint that exposes the impulsive. You are the man who no longer needs to talk to prove anything, because everything about your presence already has. Now leave them guessing. Let your life speak in movements, not monologues. Let your victories speak for your vision. Let your silence say what your words never could. And when they ask, "Why don't you talk more?" smile, because if they understood your silence, they would fear your words. And if you've listened this far, it's not by accident. It's because a part of you already understands. A part of you already knows that the version of you who needed to explain, to please, to overshare, must die here. Now, you've felt the exhaustion of being too available. You've seen how people twist your honesty. You've tasted the regret that follows every unnecessary word. And still, you're here. Now tell me, in the comments, are you ready to be quiet in a world that demands noise? Are you ready to be unreadable, misunderstood, even disliked, so long as you never betray your power again? Are you ready to walk into rooms and say nothing and still dominate? If this message cut deep, if it awakens something in you, write these words in the comments. I choose my silence. Let's see how many of you are ready to stop explaining and start commanding. And don't stop here. The next video matters more than you realize. Go watch it now. I'll meet you there.